Well, I'm just gonna hop into it because I'm pretty sure this is gonna be a slightly longer one. Yeah. Okay. So the book of Ecclesiastes. So let me start by saying this. It's more like today I'm taking off the preacher hat, putting on the teacher hat. So it's not so much a sermon to, I don't know, to encourage or rebuke or anything like that. It's more just we're gonna be going over chapter 1 and 2 of Ecclesiastes, and hopefully, God willing, I can make it through all the way to the 12th chapter. Not today, but as the weeks go on. So this is just more a description of the teacher's life. And just to preface it, it doesn't explicitly say that the teacher is Solomon, but from the description that you get, his wisdom, being the son of David, the teacher, the king of Israel, it's more than likely that he is Solomon. So if I do interchange the words teacher and Solomon, that's why. So here I have the book of Ecclesiastes studies the life of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Old in weather, he gathers the people to share his wisdom. He reflects on all his pursuits under the sun and is burdened by what he has found. Through pleasure, work, power, wealth, and even religion, he seeks wisdom and has experienced much of life. Through trial and toil, he lifts the veil of life's deepest treasures, only to discover there is no treasure at all, only chasing after the wind. What has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. All a man's knowledge, and even wisdom itself, leads to the same place. There is nothing new under the sun. He sees how meaningless it is to chase after the wind. It can neither be caught, nor do we know where it comes from or where it goes. And even if you gain what you seek, death will snatch it before you can ever hold it. So the question for us becomes, what is the meaning of it all? The answer depending on what is at the center of your life. Ecclesiastes is like a mirror. It reveals the heart of a man. How it's understood shows what your life truly is. For what is your life if not a vapor? Here one moment, gone the next. For the one who lives apart from God, the book is heavy with despair. All that they strive for is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Their life is but grass that withers, like smoke that vanishes. All their toil and achievements, all their gain amount to nothing, and speeds headfirst towards the same fate as every other person, whether wise or foolish, king and peasant alike. Yet the one who walks with God finds another reality. Even the meaningless is given purpose. That is the gift of God to those who turn to him. The teacher has lived both sides of this coin, and this is the paradox of the teacher's life. His greatness in wealth and knowledge were eclipsed only by his wisdom, a wisdom gained by living the very life that drove him to declare everything is meaningless. Okay, so now I'm going to read, if you guys want to read along, it'll be Ecclesiastes. I'll read through first chapter 1, and then I'll do chapter 2, and then I'll get into the actual teaching of it. I got you. So I'll be reading through chapter 1 and 2 of Ecclesiastes. Is that loud enough? You guys can follow along if you want. So this is verse 1 of chapter 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. I, the teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. This is chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the sun during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem too, as well the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in darkness. But I came to realize that the fate of the fool overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself. This too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun is grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether or not the person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I have poured my efforts and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless, a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. And so you can see here that the teacher is well versed in life. He's experienced. He's done pretty much everything under the sun. If he hasn't done it, then he's looked and to see somebody who has done it, and he's observed everything that's happened under the sun, and he finds it to just be meaningless. He finds it to be of no value to him, because ultimately death is going to swallow up whatever he's worked for, whatever he's gained under the sun. death is going to take that away from him. It vanishes as fast as he can get it. And so that causes him to despair and to hate the work that he did under the sun, because it really was meaningless. And I see that even amongst us, even Christians can pursue things that are just completely meaningless, things that they build that they're going to leave behind. We cry and we toil over things that ultimately they don't come with us. We leave the same way we came, with nothing. And so that's the hello. That is the message of at least the first two chapters of Ecclesiastes. And it really is, it can be a depressing book to the person who is far from God, who is apart from God. And I think it does do a lot to reveal what is your life? What do you live for? And so the teacher examines all that is done in life under the sun, and he asks his audience, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? We see it too, don't we? That generations come and generations go. The sun rises and the sun sets. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. Round and round all things go. There's nothing new under the sun. The teacher finds himself exhausted by this endless cycle, by the meaningless striving of man, by the brevity of life, so fleeting it can't hold on to what it gains, by wisdom itself, which when pursued apart from God brings only sorrow. So the teacher concludes, all things are wearisome, more than one can say. The teacher calls it a chasing after the wind. Imagine the foolishness of trying to take hold of a puff of smoke. The moment you reach out to grasp it, it's already slipped through your fingers. And even if you could hold it, it would vanish in an instant. So it is with life itself, fleeting as smoke, as fragile as a breath, and Scripture confirms this truth. Job cried out, remember, O God, that my life is but a breath. And James asks us, what is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. The teacher himself says, for who knows what is good for a person in life during the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow. So life drifts like a vapor. Job calls it a breath. James says it's a mist, all of them fading. And yet with God, even what fades can be gathered, and even with what vanishes can be redeemed. Life can move beyond the smoke and vapor to something real, something lasting. Yet life under the sun moves in its endless rhythm. The constant repetition of life wearies the teacher. He sees the world always moving but never arriving. As the teacher looks upon nations and kings, he sees the same restless cycle in every generation. He sees that nothing ever really changes. Nations rise, kings are crowned and dethroned, wealth is gained and lost, and the heart of man remains restless. Humanity strives with all its energy, yet the teacher sees only repetition and restlessness. And from the depths of all his searching, he asks us, is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? And he answers, it was already here long ago. It was here before our time. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing, and the heart never finds its fill. So we run from one novelty to another, one thrill to the next. People crave something new, something lasting, yet life is but a vapor, repeating itself in weary cycles. We strive for wealth only to hand it over to another. We long for reputations with a world that forgets us. We pursue legacies written in the history books of men rather than the books of God. But the things once held in high honor, they perish. The name of great men are etched into tombstones, rather weathered by time, then forgotten. So the teacher reminds us, no one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. In the end, even memories betray us. Every name is forgotten. And so you see here that the teacher is asked he's asking the questions that we all deal with. What is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of all our striving? What do we do with the days that we have? And he is, I would say in my conclusion, he's in his old age, and it's Solomon peering over the audience that he's gathered together. and he's looking at his life. He's diagnosing his own life and looking back and seeing all the things that he's done, and he can look back and almost identify with each and every one of our struggles, because he had more money, he had more fame, he had more wisdom, he had more wives, he had more of whatever it is that we try to acquire. He acquired it all. And if he didn't acquire it, he saw somebody acquired it and he took it to heart. And ultimately his his conclusion was that it was all meaningless. Every step that he did, every vineyard he planted, every tree he planted, every water grove he made, every wife that he had, it was all meaningless outside of God. And he lived, I would say, a good part of his life outside of God. And I think we can, to some degree, depending on when you came to Christ and how long you've been a Christian or whatever it is, we've lived life on the flip side of the coin. We've lived life without God, and we can see that, or I would hope you could see that the things that you strove for in that time in your life were meaningless. And it's it's something that can not just be taken away from you in death, but even in this life, it can be taken away from you. Maybe you you strove for the things, you strove for wealth. You wanted more wealth. You wanted more, to be more successful, to get it and find out that it wasn't all it was cut out to be. All the striving and all the stressing and all the late nights and all the things that bother you so much, that cause you anxiety, you look back on them and you don't even remember what you were striving for. You don't even remember why it was so necessary for you to attain this wealth or this fame or this wisdom or these things that perish, these things that we can't take with us. And so the teacher is like us in that sense, that he has strove for all these things and he finds them all meaningless. So work, knowledge, ambition, they're not evil in themselves. God gives us a mind to learn, hands to work, and desires to build. But when these become the center of life, they fail us. They cannot fill the emptiness of the soul or carry us beyond the grave. Knowledge only reveals how broken the world really is, and achievements fade with time. Wealth slips through our fingers, and wisdom itself only brings sorrow. We work and toil, yet we cannot hold on to what we gain. All is but a breath, here one moment, gone the next. None of these give lasting peace. So what is gained? Exactly what we toiled for. Nothing new. The teacher speaks as if from a distance, surveying his life's pursuits, but it's really his own life that he's diagnosing. In his search for wisdom and watching all that is done under the heavens, he discovers that the more he sees, the more meaningless it all becomes. The more he acquires, the less he has. Instead of satisfaction with pleasure, he finds frustration. Instead of happiness and wisdom, he finds sorrow. Instead of relief in knowledge, he finds grief. And more than all that he searched out, he finds everything to be a chasing after the wind. So the teacher concludes, what is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. He sees that each pursuit promises fullness, yet leaves the soul empty, because life under the sun is cut off from the one above the sun. All the striving of man falls short because it aims at the wrong horizon. We look under the sun for meaning. We chase what perishes. But what perishes cannot fix what is broken, nor straighten what has been made crooked. This is the problem Jesus confronted in his day. A great crowd of people followed him because they saw that he did signs and miracles. They followed him because they filled their stomachs, or he filled their stomachs with bread, but he rebuked them. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life. They were chasing bread under the sun, bread that could not satisfy, or that could satisfy for only a moment, yet it would leave them hungry again. They were missing the bread that gives life eternal. And in some sense, the teacher saw this long before. He realized that no matter how good the thing, even wisdom itself, was not enough. Even the best gifts, apart from God, are chasing after the wind. And just as these gifts fade, so too does the bloom of life. Every spring, a flower pushes through the soil, and for a moment it bursts through in color. Its petals spread wide, soaking in the sun. Its beauty catches the eye. It seems strong, as though it might last forever. But the summer comes, the sun scorches it, the edges curl, and its beauty is gone. Fall arrives, and its petals litter the ground, forgotten. Winter follows, and the frost crushes it. What once seemed so alive proves fragile, and soon it is gone, buried beneath the soil. Yet when spring returns, the cycle begins again. And Isaiah puts it plainly: the grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of the Lord blows on them. Surely the people are grass. That is life under the sun. We rise, we labor, we shine for a moment, but time withers us, and nothing truly remains. No matter how much strength or beauty we gather, time and death strips it all away. What was once vibrant becomes weary, and no matter how many times life blooms again, it cannot escape the scorch of the sun. The teacher perceives this truth. Our greatest efforts, like flowers, cannot endure. This is why the teacher says, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, and the more knowledge, the more grief." He realizes that the wise, like the fool too, share the same fate. Wisdom has its advantage for a time, but in the end, the fool dies, the wise dies, both are forgotten. For the fate of the fool will overtake me also. The teacher sees that his wisdom, though great, cannot deliver him from death. His wisdom cannot silence the grave. The teacher could only diagnose the wound. What then do I gain by being wise? The teacher says. So the flower fades, wisdom fails, life under the sun withers, and the teacher is left chasing the wind. And even after all this, all the toil and work, the gathering and storing, the accumulation of wisdom and knowledge, embracing madness and folly, building houses and vineyards, amassing silver and gold, denying himself nothing his eyes desire, refusing his heart no pleasure, and becoming greater by far than anyone else in Jerusalem before him, he is empty, weary, spent by all he's done under the sun, because he knows the wise, like the fool, will not long be remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. The work which once gave his heart much delight turned grievous. The teacher looks as if peering past the horizon of his days, beyond his years, and he sees how everything he has done, all the moments of his life, are crushed by the weight of eternity. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? The teacher looks at his work, his wisdom, his pleasure, and he sees them disappear into the endless horizon of eternity. Like salt poured into the ocean, all his accomplishments dissolve into nothing. Time does not preserve, it erases. Not only does time erase all, it steals the delight of it it steals the delight of it while we live. He realizes that even a king's crown cannot escape the shadow of death. Another will come, take his throne, squander his wealth, and forget his wisdom. The monuments he built will crumble, the gardens he planted will wither, the silver and gold will pass into the hands of another. Death stands over his shoulder like a lingering shadow. Every joy he's tasted, every project he completed, every treasure he stored up, death would take it from him. Death devours all, and eternity swallows death. So the teacher in his distress proclaimed, I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And it's here at the sight of death, the teacher's grief hardens into hatred. He loathes the reality that everything he worked for will no longer be his. He has poured out his life into wisdom, into wealth, into projects, and now he must leave it all behind. It will fall into the hands of another, like pouring his life into a cup that someone else would drink, or planting a vineyard he will never taste. And in his grief, the teacher discerns a reality that weighs on us all. Everything sweated for under the sun falls to another. And so it reminded me of the story of Pharaoh, the fact that he had everything a man could want. He was the 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 essentially the god of a nation. They worshipped him like he was a god. Anything he wanted, he could have. He had slaves, he could have women, he had riches, he could have anything that he wanted. And yet, in one single night, it was all taken away from him. And so, I feel like that is it's really the fate of us all, because it'll be one day. that we're here, and then the next day we'll be gone. And I know for some that can be a heavy message to accept, that death is the fate of us all, that we will leave behind all the things that we've gained, all the things that we've toiled for, all the things that we've been anxious over, that we've cried over, that we felt was just the end of our lives. It's all going to really come to an end because death will come for us all. But again, for the person who has God, that isn't the end. But the person who doesn't have God, it is the end. That is the end of this story. That's the period to their book. That's the final page. They strove, they did all the work, they sweated under the sun just to lose it all and hand it over to another. And so there's a blessing in, I mean, clearly there's a blessing in walking with God, but there's a blessing in walking with God and having those gifts, the gifts of wealth, the gifts of family, the gifts of having wisdom, because now it's not meaningless, because now it comes from the gift giver. It comes from the God that we worship. It comes from the one who is eternal, the one who can sustain. And so I bring up the story of Pharaoh because I put here, Pharaoh gained everything a man's heart could desire. Nations bowed to him. The wealth of kings flowed into his storehouses. His monuments rose like mountains. His name was carved into stone, and the people worshipped him as if he were a god. He filled his heart with everything under the sun, but he lacked the one thing that could sustain him, God. Generations of pharaohs lived out before him, each thinking they were immortal, and yet no fortress, no army, no monument could keep death at bay. Switch this over. He could not see that all he had and worked for would one day slip through his fingers. He never stopped to consider that death would ultimately be his fate. And in a single night, death came for him, not through armies, not through revolt, but through a heart hardened and weighed down by all he owned. His palace echoed with weeping. His firstborn son, the heir to his throne, was struck down. Pharaoh, the god of Egypt, could not hold on to what he gained. And in a moment, all his monuments, all his treasures, all his glory, his supposed divinity meant nothing. Pharaoh lost everything a man's heart could desire. And Pharaoh, like the teacher, reached out to touch greatness. But the difference is this: Pharaoh rejected God. The teacher, even wearied by his futility, turned at last to him. Where the teacher sees all the toil of his life fading into death's grasp and turns to the one who gives greatness, who is the greatest. That was nice. Pharaoh continued chasing the wind, straight into the arms of death, to his own ruin. The teacher says, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? After all his searching and finding only grief and despair, the teacher discovers this small but profound truth. Even in a world where everything fades, there is joy for us that come there is a joy for us that comes from the hand of God, a gift to be received. There is a hand glimpsed but not grasped that gives the fleeting joys of bread and work a taste of what endures beyond our toil. Not enough to save, but enough to remind us that there is one above the sun, one in whom joy is not fleeting, who is greater than the sun, who holds the wind, whose ways are beyond our grasp. Food, drink, work, none of these can satisfy. They are fleeting and fragile, but when received as gifts from God, they carry meaning. For a moment they shine with purpose, because they point beyond themselves to the giver of those things. And yet even this satisfaction is not the fullness of our hearts. We were made for more than bread that fills for a day, or labor that satisfies for a season. We were made for the one who is eternal. The teacher is caught between hope and despair. He glimpses the truth, dimly seen through the fog of time. To the person who pleases God, he gives wisdom and knowledge and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The teacher knows there is an enduring work. They cannot see what that enduring work will be. He is stuck with joys that are real yet fragile, gifts that are good yet fleeting. The manna came down from heaven in the wilderness. The people gathered it day by day, just as we gather all our work and toil under the sun. But in the morning it spoiled. What they gathered did not last. That is life under the sun. Everything stored up, everything built, everything clung to, it fades away. And so it is with us. Our tents fade, our work crumbles, our days flee. What we gather does not remain. The teacher is weighed down by the futility of it all, his pursuits pressing on him, and the truth that nothing under the sun endures. And yet he is giving a glimpse, or given a glimpse. God is present, even if the teacher cannot see beyond the sun. And so the point of chapter 1 and 2 is really that we can work, we can strive, we can do all these things, we can run the rat race, but ultimately all that we gain from running the rat race, all that we gain from being anxious and toiling, it ultimately comes to nothing. It ultimately will, we can't take it with us. And the only thing that remains is your relationship with God, if you have that relationship with God. But it requires that you, it's something I say all the time, is that you actually know him. And to know him is to know his word. And if you don't know the word, if you're not intimate with Christ, then all that you strive for, it doesn't matter how many kids you have, it doesn't matter how much wealth you build, it doesn't matter how big the home is, it doesn't matter how well known you are, it doesn't matter how much success you build, because you're going to leave it behind. You're going to give it to another. You're going to go into the grave and take none of it with you. And that's the fate of the person who doesn't know God. And so it can be a depressing book. It can be something that is very weighty and, for lack of better words, depressing. But it's only for the person who doesn't have God. And really the purpose of the book is that you sit with that weight, is that you sit with knowing that the things that you strive for, the things that you consume, that consume your thoughts, the things that you spend your weeks and your days and your months and your minutes and all these things on, they amount to nothing. They're truly meaningless in the ultimate sense of being meaningless, because they're not lasting. They're not eternal. And so we, as Christians, should be people who work for what is eternal. We should be building what is eternal. We should be storing up wealth in heaven, where it doesn't rust, where it doesn't get stolen away, and where it isn't affected by the thief. That is death, that comes to steal, that comes to take it all away from you when you pass away. And so I don't know how much time has passed by. I thought it would be longer, I guess. But if you take nothing else away from it, if you leave feeling grieved that it seems almost unresolved, that the teacher just sits in grief for the first 2 chapters, and really he sits in grief for the first 11, I would say the whole book, actually, all the way up to the end, he comes to a realization. But we'll get there. If, God willing, I can make it through to chapter 12. But really the point of the book is that you sit with the grief of knowing that your life apart from God is meaningless. And it should make you question whether or not God is a part of your life. Is he the center of your life? Not is he just a part of it, but is he the focus of your life? Because anything less than what he's asking you, which is to make him your life, not a part of your life, but that he live in you, dwell in you, and that you surrender your will to his will in all things, even the things that make you uncomfortable, even the things that your finances, your marriage, your kids, all these things. And if you're not willing to, so if you love any of those things more than you love him, then he says you're not worthy of him. So you don't have him. And if you don't have him, then you should sit in the grief in the same way the teacher sat in his grief. Because in those moments that he's reflecting on and he's looking back on, those are the moments of his life when he wasn't focused on God, when God wasn't the center of his life. And so if you can understand anything, it's that death is the ultimate equalizer. If you take nothing else away, we all know that our lives are fleeting, and that we, God willing, will all grow old and have long and beautiful lives. But even if you have the long, beautiful life and you fill it with all the joys of the things under the sun, death is going to take it away. And so what do you have after that? What do you have after all the joys go away and you're lowered 6 feet under? The only thing you can have is Christ. But if you don't know his word, you don't have him. And if you don't have him, then you have nothing, because you're going to spend a lot longer in eternity than you are the 60, 70, 80, 100 years that we have here. I hope we all live to 100. I hope we all can healthily to 100. No? All right, well, fair enough. Fair enough. I hope we live till we're just healthy, and then we sleep. But either way, I hope we have a life. I hope we have a life that's full of joys and wealth and prosperity and all those things. But understand that ultimately, that's not the goal. The goal isn't for you to be happy. The goal isn't for you to be wealthy. The goal isn't for you to amass fame and wealth and wisdom. That isn't the goal of life. The goal of life is Christ. To have him, to attain him. And in attaining him, you will have all these other things. And so I guess I'll close on the fact that grief in itself isn't a bad thing. To feel the weight of the the knowledge that death will take it all away, and that all your wisdom and all your striving and all your toil will ultimately amount to nothing, because you can't take it with you. So it's not a bad thing to sit in that grief and to understand that, because I think, like Christ, if we striving to be like Christ, then Christ was a man of many sorrows. So we can't avoid it. We can't avoid being sorrowful. We can't avoid the persecution. We can't avoid the things that make us uncomfortable. But it's good to sit with them. It's good to understand them. It's good to know that in them is a purpose. That's all I got.